Morning, everyone. Can you all hear me? I know it's early in the morning. Thank you all for joining us. I suspect we'll have more trickling in throughout the morning's program, but I wanted us to go ahead and get started. My name is Laura Kroger. I'm a research program specialist with the Office of Research and Innovation, and you've seen a lot of communications from me about this event today, but we are really excited that you're here. We actually wanted to start today's program with a little bit of an interactive question for our new faculty. And this is actually we're gonna ask you to take out your cell phone, or you can do this on your laptop. Looking at the top of the screen, if you type in menti.com, it's MENTI.com, and use the 6-digit code at the top, we'd like to kind of get a little bit of feedback from you. So our first question is, which agenda item are you most looking forward to today? And as you answer, we should start seeing some of your results up on the screen. Faculty resources, networking sessions. I'm surprised no one said lunch first. Networking lunch. Pretty even. So good spread, but how to find and acquire funding is always a popular panel we have. Great. So funding is obviously the hot topic for new faculty, but really that's the hot topic for everybody. And it looks like we're pretty even for the rest of the day's agenda. So I just have one more question for you. Oops. I had to do this yesterday too. All right. So our next question, just to kind of warm you up, is what has been your favorite thing at NC State so far? So the group that I've invited today should have been the last 3 years. You've maybe been here 3 years or less at NC State University. So what is your favorite thing you've done or your favorite thing about NC State? Keyword is so far. We encourage you to stay on. The students. That's it. Everyone just likes their students. The weather. Where did some of you come from that the weather is much milder here? Is that what it is? Less, okay. Not as hot then, maybe. Which is funny for some of us down in the South. Did anybody come from an area with a lot of snow and hasn't seen it now in 3 years? The ice cream. Diversity, scholarly freedom. It's a good one. The think and do mentality. I like that. And we have a cute mascot. Mr. Wolf or Mrs. Wolf, or both. Beautiful campus. I agree with that. I really like the brick. Easy living, faculty, colleagues. Or you said that to butter up your colleagues today, is that what it was? All right. Well, thank you. Thank you everyone for kind of playing along with us. We are gonna use Menti throughout today's program. So just remember at the top of the screen, you'll always see this menti.com and you'll see the 6-digit code to use to go ahead and enter some of your answers. We'll be using them for the Q&A during the panels today, and we also have a couple follow-up questions about the program. All right. Let's get you back to the regularly scheduled program. All right. So I'm going to ask our Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation to come up on stage, Mladen Volk, to introduce himself and get us started with today's agenda.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure and a privilege to have you here today. I will welcome you again to NC State. I'm sure you've been welcomed several times. And my name is Mladen Bok. I'm Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation, and you'll see what that covers. Research being one of the important components of what you do at NC State. We will try to give you an insight into what that landscape looks like and what we can do for you and what you should be expecting from us and what we will be, or university will be expecting from you. So without much ado, let me start. I'm sure you know that, but NC State really is a big place. It's certainly one of the biggest in North Carolina. It's a powerhouse in the domain of science, technology, engineering, math. And it has 10 colleges, has 2 auxiliary colleges as well, but 10 colleges that cover a broad swath of science and arts and so on. And we have about 36,000 or so students and maybe 2,200 plus faculty and another 5,000 employees. And we put into the economy of North Carolina about $6.5 billion minimum a year. So if you haven't been to Centennial Campus, you should do that. It's a wonderful place. It's a mixture of industry and academia and government institutions, and it really is a catalyst for a lot of innovation. But the main campus, of course, has the tradition and some other charms. So you should try and see everything. Our annual research expenditures are over $500 million, and NC State's budget is about 1.5 billion actually. And we excel in many things, but one of the things we're particularly proud of is really our innovation and commercialization unit that really puts us to the front in many ways. But one of the underlying columns to keep that up is our relationship with industry. And we are actually, in terms of industrial funding, in the top 10 in the country all the time, barring some of the medical institutions. So if you are interested in what our expenditures look like, we see that we are fairly uniformly distributed in terms of where the money comes from. Those are different major agencies, and the rankings, the numbers are fiscal year 18. Fiscal year is summer, July 1 to June 30th of 18, and we get the money. We get about $200 million in federal funding from those places, but in addition to that, we have another $100 million or so, actually $300 million in total, of money coming from industry, from state, North Carolina state contracts, not direct support, and we have also gifts and private funds coming in. So the total then, when it comes to expenditures, is over $500 million a year. An interesting thing is that when we talk about the growth of where NC State has an opportunity to grow in terms of funding, some of the opportunities that come up are, for instance, Department of Energy, Health and Human Services, that's basically NIH, and DOD, because those are very large pots of research money that we potentially don't tap into sufficiently. So that's an opportunity for everybody involved. I'm just curious, how many of you are from College of Engineering? Okay. How many are from Life Sciences, College of Sciences, CALS, and so on? Okay. And humanities and design and all that? out of the 10 colleges. Did I not cover any of your affiliations? Okay. But there are many opportunities for all colleges across the board, not just life sciences or humanities, for instance, and social sciences and education. We actually get quite a lot of funding as well. If you look at our growth in funding, we see that we are ramping up. It's an upward slope, which is a good thing. But the interesting part is that down here is our federal funding, and then up on that is state and industry funding and institutional funding, which is internal funding that NC State provides. For instance, startups that you get would be considered research funding from the university. In fact, if you look at what we do with respect to other institutions, we are actually fourth in state and local government funds, 13 in business for public, and second for schools without medical, for colleges without, universities without medical schools, 11th in non-medical research, and 52nd total, but 9th among public schools. And one of the things to remember about NC State, it's a land-grant university, which is very important for us, and it is a research-intensive university, very research-intensive university. And all that has certain implications on what we do, how we operate, and outreach is actually a large proportion of what NC State does. We have footprint primarily through the Ag School in all 100 counties of North Carolina, so that's important. Our mission is not just the one that belongs to the land-grant university and to very high research activity, but we are also, when it comes to this unit, which is the Research and Innovation, Office of Research and Innovation, we are trying to promote growth of research enterprise on NC State as much as possible. And one thing to remember is we're a central unit and a service unit in many ways. Every one of the colleges has also research administration. You should probably be already familiar with them, and many departments have specialized research administrators that can help you with grant submission, certainly with grant management when you get the grants. How many of you have experience with your research administrators already? Yeah, I would expect that all of you would have by now in some way. So when it comes to strategic directions of the big unit, our unit, which I'll tell a little bit more about, central unit, we certainly go through this list of things, supporting recruitment of faculty and students. So if you have questions about that, somebody in your college can answer that, but we can also help you with that. Central facilities are in our domain, and we can help you with that. Large grants are in our domain. We can help with that, and we'll say a few words about that. And of course, partnerships and collaborations across the campus, particularly interdisciplinary one, are very important. We do many things. This list is incomplete. There should be an et cetera at the end. But we're from helping you secure the funding to helping you license your innovations, if you have those, to ensuring compliance. One thing that we do, and you should remember that, is with the responsibility of when you get a grant and when you federal funding or any other funding, along with that comes the responsibility to comply with federal, state, and local laws and regulations and policies and so on. And One of the things that you'll keep hearing very often, and you may already have, and should have probably done it, is something that's called a conflict of interest declaration that you have to sort of fill out and submit, telling us whether you have some conflict. And then along another one that usually goes with that is a notice of intent, which you file if you want to consult for someone, or if you want to, for some reason, get paid from a startup that you have, or anything else that may look like financial income for you. And faculty are allowed to consult 1 day a week. That's not a problem. They can do it longer if they need to. In the summer, it's depends on whether you're getting summer salary or not. It'll vary as well. But you'll probably hear a lot more about that today, right? Later? Is someone going to touch on these things? Okay, so networking, yeah. So if you are receiving, for instance, summer salary through university, you cannot at the same time work for someone else. That, for instance, is a conflict that needs to be not just declared, but probably resolved in some way. This is a general structure. I'm not going to walk through the whole thing on this chart of how we operate, what this particular unit does. There is an equally complicated one, potentially, for every college when it comes to their research administration and going all the way down to individual departments. But let me tell you what we do. So, for instance, Dr. John Horowitz, who is sitting over here, John, if you raise your hands, everybody can see him. He runs something that's called Office of Research Development. And research development is concerned about funding, finding funding opportunities, letting everybody know what they are in the university, managing things like limited submission opportunities. Those are opportunities where university is allowed to submit only one, maybe two, maybe three, in some cases, proposals or responses to an RFP, to a request for proposals. And then you have to go through our office to actually submit that. Large grants, very often, not always, tend to be of that kind sometimes. And research infrastructure that this university has to actually support you is very important. It ranges from high-performance computing to a pool of spectrometers and other tools that you may need. They are expensive. Not everybody has them that you may need for your work, for your research work. And they are called core facilities, and there's a whole bunch of them. I'm not going to go through the list of those, but you should look them up. They are important components of what you can leverage to make your research successful. We also oversee centers and institutes. There is about 45 maybe of those, and centers and institutes have their director and have their structure, and they may be reporting to the dean, or they may be reporting to us if they are university-level centers. There are also centers that may exist in labs, exist in your departments that are not necessarily centrally overseen. And that oversight is coming from us right now for these. And then an extremely important component is the proposal development unit. The proposal development unit, Pradeep is somewhere here, up there he is. Director of the proposal development unit, that's the unit that can help you write your proposals. If the proposals are more than $1 million, you definitely want to get into the queue and talk with them, because they can arrange a lot of things for you. They can eliminate a lot of routine work, collecting CVs, doing all sorts of other things. So this is, and we'll get back to that in a second. Shared court research facilities, I just want to say one more thing is that those facilities can actually make your research much more competitive outside, because the specialized tools that you might need, actually, we may be able, they're very expensive, we may be able to get for you and others in your field. So this is something you should really get familiar with. The proposal development unit does things like team facilitation, for instance, budget development for you, writing and editing, administrative assistance, and and they have a really good success rate. Proposals going out that have been managed by the PDU have actually much higher probability of being successful than regular proposals going out, mostly because they provide for you the information and the technology around putting the whole thing together. Another group that we have is run by Rick Liston. Rick? There he is in the back. And that is Rick oversees the regulatory compliance program and regulatory sponsored programs and regulatory compliance. And you will meet the directors of those units. And this can apply to the pre-award and apply to regulatory compliance in general, and very much the post-award. And if we make mistakes there, we can end up penalizing the whole university. And so it's very, very important to talk to us. And we will, of course, be in touch with you and let you know what needs to happen. Sherry Settle is over there. She runs the sponsored programs operation. So anything that has to do with particularly proposals going out and then any negotiations that when they come in with the entities that might be giving you the sponsorship, that goes through her office. There is another office that does post awards to some extent. It's called C&Gs, and contracts and grants. And I don't think that Justo is here. Oh, he is. Where? Oh, he will be here. So, pardon? Often, okay. Yeah, you'll meet him. He counts the money once the money is on campus. The person that is very important is Richard. Richard, somewhere here. Networking break. He does things like research integrity oversight, conflict of interests. If you happen to have human subjects, his unit does that. If you happen to have animals you deal with, his unit does that. And if you have export controls, your research involves export controls, definitely you need to be in his space. So keep an eye on that. That's Justo, contracts and grants. You're going to see him later. And the person who is not here today, I think, is Allison Wilson. Dr. Allison Wilson is our Associate Vice Chancellor for National Security and Special Research Initiatives, and her portfolio is here on the, or part of her portfolio is here on the slide. So if you have an interest in those things, you should definitely get in touch with her. Genevieve is our Chief of Staff. Where is she? There she is. And she runs the Office of Research and Office Research Operations and Communications. and her group is responsible for organizing this event today, and I do want to thank her office and the staff for actually putting this together. So, Wade, I thought I saw him somewhere. Ah, there he is. That's our Assistant Vice Chancellor for commercialization, research commercialization. If you have a startup that you want to put together, if you have any kind of licensing questions, if you have intellectual property you want to disclose or protect, that unit is the one you want to go to. And we, by the way, have a number of patents and other things coming out of that unit, as already mentioned. We, by the way, have also venture funds, at least university, and the universities in the Triangle have venture funds, and connections to venture funds can happen through Wade's operation. And the statistics are impressive. We are sort of one of the better known, in fact, I would like to say one of the top top universities when it comes to commercialization in the country. And Rick is here again. Rick sort of lives double life. And he also runs internal to us financial services, human services, and Shannon is somewhere here. Shannon, there you go. She's in charge of our lives. And research administration. Those activities will be more visible to centers reporting to us, because for those centers we will run some of these activities. Otherwise, it's an internal unit. So I have covered it very quickly. If you have any questions, please do ask. You have to remember that you will have similar structures at the level of your college. Whether you actually have an administrative research person in your department or not depends on how the college and the department is structured. There's definitely always someone at the college level. And then centrally, we do a lot of things that university has to do, from compliance to actually making sure that everything is when it goes out, your proposals actually make it out and they don't get lost in the noise. So, okay, any questions? Well, in that case, welcome again to NC State. Thank you for being here, and do not hesitate to ask questions. And you should certainly tell your colleagues who may not have made it today here where to go and look for answers. Thanks. Thing coming up that I need to do. I need to introduce Genevieve. Yeah, Genevieve Garland is an assistant vice chancellor for research and operations and communications, and she will be actually moderating the panels. So welcome.
All right, good morning. I'm gonna do my best to remember this side. It feels heavy to the right today. Can everybody hear me okay in the room? Okay, great. It's my pleasure to moderate the panels this morning. We have a great program for you. I'm gonna ask our first panel today to come up, and you have the cards, Laura? Okay, this is our faculty resource panel, so if you guys will join me on the stage, please. We're going to have you come up here. We have some table tents for you. We also have a slide, I believe. And what we're going to do is have them come up here and introduce themselves. You can set yourselves anywhere you like. There's no order. And we've done boy, girl, boy, girl. Well done. That just happened. So what we've done is we put together a group of people we believe will provide you some of the great resources across this campus. And I think what we want to do is start by doing a brief introduction of everyone. And then we have a series of questions, we've kind of feeder questions, but we'll also put the Mentimeter up here in a minute. So if anybody's shy in the room and doesn't want to raise your hand and ask questions, you can also feed the questions through the Mentimeter, or we'll also allow questions from the room. So I'll remind you of that. But John, maybe you want to kick us off? Yeah, let's introduce yourself a little bit about what you do first.
As Dr. Volk mentioned, I'm John Horowitz.
Everybody hear John okay? Okay, we'll make sure we get all the sound right first.
I serve as Associate Vice Chancellor for Research here at NC State. I have a broad portfolio of responsibilities, as you heard, but it includes, for this panel anyway, it includes core facilities at NC State. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have about them. And in addition, there are two representatives, two directors from core facilities back there, and of course, they're the real experts. So they'll be able to provide detailed answers to any questions you might have.
Hi, I'm Mira Waller. I'm the head of research engagement at the libraries here at NC State, and I'm basically head of a unit at the libraries that provides a number of different services, but in particular for this group, research support services. And I'm fortunate in that my department is also part of a larger portfolio at the libraries here. So we have a very distributed research support service network throughout the university, but also at the libraries. And so I have a number of my colleagues who will be at the two different networking events who also represent some of the broad services that the libraries can provide to support the research excellence that you, I know, will be bringing to NC State.
Good morning. Thanks for being here today. As was mentioned, my name is Wade Fulgham. I'm Assistant Vice Chancellor for the Office of Research Commercialization. We are a team of about 20-plus professionals who basically handle all intellectual property that's created at the university, and we're responsible for helping you commercialize your research. And you'll hear more as we go on today, but thank you for being here.
Good morning. My name is Vicki Arp, and I'm the Director of Marketing for Research and Innovation, and I help tell the story of research and innovation at NC State, working with some other central resources. And I also run our digital magazine, results.ncsu.edu, and help tell the story of research through our central channel, research.ncsu.edu as well.
Good morning. I'm Ken Kretschmann. I'm Director of Environmental Health and Safety here at NC State. Our mission is to reduce risk in terms of injury, illness, property damage, environmental damage, and also to support your research and do reviews, approvals, and such, hopefully in a way that is as efficient as possible and keeps your research continuity flowing.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. So first, I'm going to make sure we can get the Mentimeter going. All right, can someone send a test question for me to make sure this thing's working? It can be anything. Don't everyone jump at this opportunity. Does everyone remember how to use the Mentimeter? Test, okay. We're good, all right, great. All right, so we're going to get going. I'm going to use some feeder questions, but if you have questions from the audience, does anyone have a burning question to get us going for this panel? No one's jumping at it. Yeah, okay, great. Do we have, hold on one second, we have a microphone for you.
So regarding research commercialization, so if you have like an idea and you want to, like, we're submitting a paper, a conference paper pretty soon. And so I moved from Pitt. So the idea started at University of Pittsburgh, and we started talking with their intellectual office, but I moved my whole lab here. And we are about to submit a paper, and I just want to know, like, who should we contact immediately, like before submitting the paper and all that.
Yeah, thank you for your question. It's a great question. How many people are here transferring from other universities?
Just one?
Just one? Okay. How many people have ever had to work or have worked with a tech transfer office before? Okay. So, the short answer to your question is just contact our office, and I can provide information. Depending on which college and department you're in, you would have a licensing professional dedicated to your department or college. Definitely contact us before you publish. This is a resource or a faculty resource panel. We are a very service-oriented group, and so we're here to make sure that you're protected. And I like to say that the mothership is protected, which is the university. And that's kind of our number one job, is to protect the mothership. And you are on the mothership now. So please contact us, and we'll walk you through all of our procedures and policies. But we're here ultimately to protect your interests.
Great. Any other questions from the audience right now? Okay. I'm going to ask a question of Ken, because I want to make sure we get the safety question in. Where do PIs learn about managing, or what the expectations are, the safety expectations for them about managing their space and their people?
Oh, thanks for the question. It's an important one. I realize that many of you are people who aren't working with hazardous chemicals or hazardous equipment, but there are safety expectations there that, again, can keep the institution and yourself and certainly your people foremost out of difficulty. We've tried to package this, first of all, in some of the online resources that have been made available to you through this training session. We have a series of FAQs. I'll have copies of that at my station. Also, we have a letter, a 2-page letter that's a rework of something that went out a few years ago. But the FAQ will point you to a place on our webpage where we try to compile things that faculty need to know rather than having you search all over the webpage. That would be very user-friendly. And there are certainly things like what to do in the case of an emergency, if someone gets hurt, that all of you will need to know, even if you're not working with hazardous materials. And then there's the other information that's more specific to that kind of wet research. Thank you.
Great. All right, I'm going to keep looking, but, just wave me down if there are questions, all right? John, can you tell us a little bit about how core facilities increase research capabilities across NC State and the value of core facilities?
Sure, great question. So like most major universities, NC State has core facilities. We have 6, and they span the gamut of activities from high-performance computing to DNA sequencing to confocal microscopy to heavy-duty analytics, whether it comes to hard materials or soft materials. Each one of these facilities is chock full of extremely expensive, sometimes very large pieces of equipment, as well as experts in how to use all of these pieces of equipment. More often than not, these instruments and expertise cannot be afforded by any individual PI or faculty members, so that's why we have core facilities. The other thing about it is let's say you have a very expensive piece of equipment in your laboratory, but you only use it once a week, once a day, once a month. Then in essence, you're paying for a maintenance contract for 24/7 use, but you're only using that piece of equipment periodically, and so that's just not efficient. Instead, we put large pieces of equipment like that into core facilities such that they're used much more effectively and efficiently. So with that said, how can they help you and your research? I think it's pretty obvious. If you are doing a project in metabolomics and you need a high-end mass spec, we've got it. No problem. All you have to do is go to a core facility that we happen to call Metric, talk to the director there or any of the staff about what your project is, what it might require, will any kind of developmental activities be required to make the measurements that you need, and they'll tell you what the cost is. Moreover, we have a software platform called Mendix that you have access to, which gives you complete access to all of the core facilities at NC State. It's very easy to use that software platform as a portal into all of the instrumentation and service charges at any of the core facilities at NC State. And so it's really one-stop shopping. You can just head into the portal, see what's available, sign up for instrumentation time, sign up for training for some of your students. It's very, very simple. So we do as much as we can to make accessing the core facilities easy and providing you with the instrumentation that you need to get the job done.
Thank you, John. It looks like we have a question, a library question through the Menti. This is for you, Mira. With the new NSF BioSketch requirements that go into effect very soon, can you speak to the assistance the library can provide with ORCID and getting a BioSketch in the new required system?
What a great question. I'm here to tell you that you are in really good hands. So first off, we have an ORCID institutional membership, and this is something that we've jointly done with the Office of Research and Innovation. We also have a guide that is on the library's page, and you can literally Google NC State Libraries and BioSketch and NC SciV, and you will get that guide. We have a team of librarians who have been working closely on this guide and have also been in touch with ORCID and have even been invited to speak in DC on this topic. So one of the things that we can do is we can help you populate your ORCID, and we also have something on the library's end that is called Citation Index that also feeds back into most likely your department or your college's site as well. And so when we do the networking sessions, I have some colleagues here who will be at the table, and they are very intimately involved with this and can work with you either here during the networking session, or we can get your contact information and we can talk with you further about that offline.
Great. All right. That leaves you. We got another question. I have to go with the Mentimeter. We have another questions for connecting with industry collaborators. So we'll let this panel do it, but we also have an upcoming panel I think that this would be a good question for. Does this group have a suggestion for connecting with industry collaborators? I'm sure you do, Wade. I know others do too.
I'll take one shot at it.
Okay, go for it. Multiple responses.
One of the things that is in my portfolio of responsibilities is industrial consortia. So let's say, for example, you're interested in nuclear engineering, and let's say you have contacts with the industry, and let's say you're interested in bringing 2 or 3 or 4 companies together to work on a project. My office can help bring those companies together, form this consortia using rules that are provided by the university, and then enable you to work with those companies on projects that would be of benefit to all of those companies at the field in general and also your research. So that's one way that we can connect you with companies and get some industrial funded research.
Anybody else?
I would just add that where our office would come in is when you're negotiating the intellectual property that would result from the sponsored research project. And that's where we would help you navigate that. And we're very sensitive to understanding that you need the funding to fund graduate students. You want these projects to happen in your lab, and we're here to help facilitate that.
So somewhat related, I'm going to ask Vicki, can you talk a little bit about some of the methods in helping faculty get the word out about the type of research they're doing, research and scholarship, and as they're looking for collaborators, if those are peers or companies or others?
Absolutely. So we have a lot of central resources here at NC State. We're fortunate that we have so many. So within your colleges, you have college communicators that you can reach out to. And if you don't know who that is in your college, you can feel free to touch base with me and I'll help connect you with that person. But we also have, I can help you tell the story through one of the channels that I have access to, which are, I talked a little bit earlier about, our digital research magazine, results.ncsu.edu, and the research website, which we just published a great story there this week about an economic impact study from our Institute for Transportation Research and Education. So there are also beat writers for each college within news services, and so that assistant director for news and national media coordinator, his name is Mick Kolakowski. He's a person that you might want to speak to, or if you're trying to push through the media, they have great media training resources, and I'm happy to help you do that. I mean, that is something that we should absolutely take advantage of because they can help you really hone your message and understand your audience needs better, and also help you with your, if you're going to be doing television, your on-screen presence, so making sure that you're more comfortable. So I do think that each faculty member should also think about how they push their messages themselves through a social media channel. And so if you are comfortable in that space, you should absolutely dig into that. And I would recommend picking one that works really well for you and going deep on that before you branch out to multiple social media channels. As we talk to our business funding partners, one social media channel that they're very interested in hearing from us on is LinkedIn. So that might be one that you might think about.
So, Vicki, another question came into Mentimeter
Okay.
that's related. And so I think you've answered a little bit of this, but it's a little bit more targeted. It says, what types of events, like publication of a paper, getting a grant, getting an award, are the main focus of research communications? So kind of knowing when and where you should be
Absolutely.
targeting
Yep.
communications and what's the right time to contact an
So
office.
if it's a big award, we do publish stories at the time of award, but those stories are going to get less media interest than actual outcomes. So if you have good research outcomes, if you've started to really have something that's a breakthrough or that is something novel, that's the time that media is probably going to be more interested in what you're talking about versus when you get the award. Publications of papers do get some interest if there's some novel finding.
Okay. Mentimeter might have backfired on us. We may not be having conversation because it's all this way. Does anyone have any questions from the audience that you want to ask? No? Yes.
For facility or centers, like we have a multi-million-dollar microscope, and we are using it for many years. It's pretty good. The question is, it's getting old, and we need a new one. I just wonder how can we successfully get I guess it's like internal proposal from the university to get a new one. Because if I write a proposal to NSF or something, they don't fund such big projects like that, $700 or $5 million projects. What is the strategy for being like publish more papers, publish better papers?
Maybe rephrase it for everybody else, John.
So the question is, I'll make it a little bit more general. So the question is as high-end equipment ages within a core facility, what are the university's plans to update those pieces of equipment? Right, since doing so via a single investigator, NSF grant, or R01, or whatever, it's not possible. So really, there are two general mechanisms that we use. The first one is we encourage faculty as well as directors of core facilities to send proposals to the various instrumentation grant programs that are run by the federal government. So for example, the NSF MRI program, or NIH's S10 program, DOD has a program. And so, in fact, that's how we've obtained lots of high-end equipment at the university. We've been incredibly successful. I believe over the last 13 years, we've won about 12 out of the 13 years, something like that. And our office is heavily involved in the selection of those proposals because they're limited submission in general. In addition, the proposal development unit, and that's Pradeep Pramanak sitting right next to you, is heavily involved in ensuring that the proposals that go to those various funding agencies are as competitive as possible. So that's one mechanism, and it's been very fruitful for the university. The second is, when new faculty come to the university, oftentimes they ask for startup packages, and oftentimes those include high-end pieces of equipment. Most of the time, it's not a $7 million microscope, but it's not unheard of for the ask to be a microscope that's about $1 million, for example. And so what we do in those instances, when we believe that that ask is appropriate and the faculty member is going to be a great addition to the university, we ask that those pieces of equipment be installed in core facilities. And in so doing, we actually build the overall level of instrumentation and capabilities within the cores at the same time as we're hiring great faculty to come to the university.
So we have another question on the Mentimeter. I'm going to tweak it a little bit so that the panel can respond to it, and I think we'll respond to it throughout the day because there's a lot of people and a lot of panels, I think, that can respond to this question. But I think if everybody on the panel would kind of address some of the training that you might have that's relevant to research and innovation and scholarship, just at a high level that you think is appropriate to this audience, I think that'd be great. And maybe if we'd start with you, Ken, that would be great.
Surely. Yes, and this relates back to the original question as to what are the responsibilities. And I use the word responsibilities. It sounds a little harsh, but a lot of the information and training that has been put together by the university, and especially through the support of research administration, there are some very tight, professionally constructed 11 to 14 minute online training that can help in our subject matter, telling you what some key things that you need to know, but also how to avoid hiccups, how to know what needs, for instance, approvals like biosafety protocols or radiation protocols. So a lot of that has been put in there to try to address questions that have come up over the years. So for safety and health training, there are 2 modules that we're asking, and this is in that FAQ again that I referenced earlier. There are 2 training modules. One is very generic that everyone needs to know, in fact, would be a good short online resource for your staff. The other one is one that's more akin to people who have research protocols. And again, these are 11 to 14 minutes and have been put together by professionals to be user-friendly.
Thank you.
So I spoke a little earlier that university communications through Mick Kulikowski, who's come in, is in the back of the room there. Through his unit, they provide media training, and I do think that that's really important if you're planning to speak to the media. But through research operations and communications, which is the unit that I fall under, we also do research training, and our head of that, Abby Gullery, can create customized trainings for your units in regards to research. They also help run the ERA training unit that will help you with our, as the units come online, the research administration software that we have here for the university.
So we have several training avenues. Our office manages and runs the National Science Foundation I-Core site for NC State. So that's one type of training. Immersing researchers into voice of customer from the market to influence your research and ultimately lead towards research commercialization. If you become interested in a startup company at some point, which I hope you do, we also have a training module called Pack Start, which is a half-day class where we walk you through all of the policies, incentives, resources, partnerships that our office provides if you are looking to launch a startup company to commercialize your research. And finally, we do many departmental and college visits and workshops on intellectual property and what are your responsibilities and how our office can help enable you. And at this time, I might mention Dr. Kultarn Chauhan, if you could raise your hand. This is our Director of Licensing. He supervises all of our licensing team. He is the IP expert on campus, and so if you have questions, he's the one to talk to.
So the libraries here at NC State provides pretty much training throughout the entire research lifecycle. We have both customizable training, one-on-one consult training, and also large-scale workshop training. We'll do that for departments, we'll do it for individuals, and we'll also do it for labs and groups. Some examples of the things that we do some training around are data management plans. We've also done some sessions on how to search for grant funding and things like InfoEd Spin. We also are branching out into areas like data curation, and we're looking to basically provide you with training and support in any area around research that we have expertise in-house on. So if you have an area, and the libraries has a workshop page on the library site, once again, you can just Google NCSU Libraries Workshop. And one of the things that we do is we'll take people's suggestions. So if you also don't see something that you would like to see some training in, you can suggest that to us as well. We also partner with other units to provide training. So a series that we recently launched is with the IRB, where we are providing basics on IRB regulations. So we do also work with other units to try and meet the needs that you might have, that even if you don't see those on the workshop pages.
And IRB is Human Subjects Research, for anyone who doesn't do that, and it falls under Research and Innovation Compliance.
The Proposal Development Unit, which is part of my office, prides itself not only on helping proposals get written and submitted, but also on mentoring faculty across the university. Molly Puente, who's back there, Molly, raise your hand, is a specialist in the NIH types of proposals, and over the last year has led 4 specific training workshops in her NIH at NC State Grantsmanship Series. Slides for all of those workshops are online, as well as a video of the last one she did, which was just a couple weeks ago. These are outstanding training workshops that you should really avail yourself of if you're interested in the NIH. So that's just one kind of training that the PDU does. Another is NSF Career Awards. The PDU has been helpful in helping faculty at NC State win dozens of these very prestigious awards over the years, and so I encourage you to look for announcements about workshops on that topic, as well as materials that may be online through their website as well. Matt Hooker, Matt, raise your hand, is right back there, and he's a kingpin when it comes to that workshop, so I encourage you to talk to Matt about when the next workshop is, how you can get involved, and if you have any specific questions.
Great. We are down to our last minute, and I'll just add that any of the questions that get added here, what we'll do is we'll keep track of those, and we'll figure out a way to maybe put together a list of all of these and some general responses and share with everyone who participated and anybody who's online as well. So we'll collect all of that. I'll just add to the statement that in addition to kind of leading research at NC State, as Malad and Vogt mentioned, we are a service organization. And so a message I think that would be good to go back to your colleges and departments. If you'd like Research and Innovation or any of our partners to come and talk more about what we do, we'd be happy to come and attend a faculty meeting or your department meeting and talk about this. So please take that message back. We'd be happy to do that. So I want to thank the panel. Will you join me, please? And thank you very much.
All right, as the panelists are moving down, I was going to skip ahead. We might skip our break, and I'm going to have Sherry Settle come on up here and do the next presentation on research process. That's going to give us the most chance to have, or the most time for our networking opportunity. So I'd like to introduce Sherry Settle. She's our Director for Sponsored Programs, and she's going to give you just a very brief outlook of the research process here at NC State. There's that. And I'll pull up your slide here. Maybe.
Good morning, and thank you, Laura. I think my role here is just to place some of these resources into the life cycle of a research project so that you can maybe relate these to offices that you've interacted with in other roles that might have gone by a different name. Most of the resources that I'm going to talk about are represented at the networking tables at the back of the room. So if you see something you're interested in, and many of these have been touched on earlier in the morning or will be represented in later panels, please come find us during either one of the networking breaks. So you're already in the research life cycle. Just by coming here, you're already contemplating what your research program might involve, what sort of questions you might explore, and who might be interested in the answers to the questions that are coming up in your research exploration. So we've talked about some of the resources here. I'm going to focus a little more on ones that have not been described in earlier comments. And this is the first slide where the College Research Office appears. Milan did mention them earlier. But for sponsored programs and contracts and grants, the College Research Offices are critical. They are the linchpin to all of these other services. NC State has a very decentralized research support model. So those College Research Offices are in communication with all of the other services we'll talk about, as well as with each other. So they can help support you in interdisciplinary collaborations that work across colleges as well. We have 10 colleges and 11 college research offices. Might sound a little off, but we do have our Integrated Support Services Center that was mentioned in Milan's slides that supports those centers, institutes, and unaffiliated units that do a lot of the research activity here on our campus. The PDU, of course, is a very strong partner, and I want to add a shout out for them as well to handle large and multidisciplinary projects. And I also want to mention our partnerships office. There was a question earlier about working with industry and finding industry collaborators. Our partnerships office is pretty special here at NC State. When we go to national professional meetings in my area, we hear from industry sponsors that they really want a concierge office, someone who can handle the multifaceted relationship between an industry sponsor and a university, and we're fortunate to have that here. People like me who work in sponsored programs think proposal development, submission, and award acceptance is the universe. We recognize there's a lot more to your research program, but those steps are very important to securing funding. College research offices are most critical here. But our office sponsored programs, which handles pre-award and non-financial post-award activities, are here to support them and you. When your research program is up and running, it does take a village. There are a lot of aspects to supporting your research. You've heard from several of our sister offices. I do want to elaborate a little bit on Milan's description of the research compliance part of Sparks, and it really captures most of those areas that you might expect to see called out separately. Our IRB for human subjects research, IACUC for animal subjects, conflict of interest, external activities for pay, and export control are all folded into research compliance here. And our folks will be at the networking tables at both breaks as well. We heard a little bit from Mira about the libraries, and libraries are not just for reference support anymore. In addition to the ORCID and Science CV resources, and that guide is one I've reviewed and tried to follow for Science CV, and it is very, very useful. So I'd encourage you to use that as a resource to get started if you haven't already, particularly if you're going to be pursuing NSF grant activity. There are also tremendous resources in the libraries to help you with data management planning and think about data storage and public access for your data long term. Now, all good things do come to an end, and as your project starts to wrap up and you've seen some really good activity and good progress, you have several resources, most of which we've talked about today, to help you both publicize and commercialize the good work that you've done. Once your grant is closed out, we realize you are not finished. This is really just the beginning of another cycle. So we could wrap that graphic all the way around and let that great work you have done inform your next project, your next proposal, and your next activities. And we look forward to working with you in all stages of your research activity. As Laura said, we do want to free up as much time as we can for networking and for consulting our resource tables. But if there's a particular question I might be able to field, I'll be happy to. Okay, thank you all, and again, welcome.
Thank you, Sherry. As Sherry mentioned, we'd like to get onto our networking tables for today's agenda. Oh, here we go. The next session of our agenda, we're going to have you get up out of your seats and meet a couple people. Towards the back of the room, you'll notice there's 16 tables, and they're full of our research units and our sister units across the university. So many of these tables may have information provided for you on there. We also have provided online resources for each group and each unit you'll be meeting with today. These representatives are here to help you, so definitely take advantage of this opportunity. If you notice on the screen up here, there's a QR code. If you've never used a QR code, you just open your photo app on your cell phone and you just zoom in to this square on the side and it'll pull up the new faculty research orientation website. So if you have any questions while you're going through the tables, that'll allow you to view the online resources at the same time. So I encourage everybody to get up out of your seats, start networking with everybody at the tables in the back. If you notice a table that doesn't have a representative at this time, they're probably coming for the lunch session. So keep in mind there will be somebody at least at each one of the tables, at least during one of the sessions today. We also have coffee and refreshments still in the back of the room, so feel free to go grab some of those, walk through the tables, take your time. We'll ask everyone to come back in their seats about 11 o'clock. All right, enjoy. You all started back to your seats. We have a couple of interesting and fun panels for you coming up at the second half of the program. Don't worry, you have a whole lunch hour to go back to those you're making connections with now and ask questions of the networking tables you were unable to get to in this half hour of time. So start making your way to your seats, grab your last coffee, a little bit of water, and a quick snack, and we'll start our next panel in just a few minutes.
Thank you for the lights. No minting meter?
I have it. Oh, but I have this first. I have this one first.
I just do what I'm told. Welcome back, everybody. I hope that you enjoyed the networking session. It looked like we had lots of good conversations, and I hope that that was good. As Laura already mentioned, there's going to be another opportunity for networking over the lunch session. So I think that this panel is going to be of interest to everyone. I'm sure this is a panel that you all have been waiting for, right? How to find and acquire funding, right? This is a very important topic for everyone. So we're going to do the same thing here that we did with the first panel. And for those of you who weren't here, I'm Genevieve Garland. I'm an Assistant Vice Chancellor in the Office of Research and Innovation and Chief of Staff there. And I'm facilitating this panel and the rest of the panels today. And then I'm going to go through and let each of the people on our panel also introduce themselves and briefly talk about their role. And then we have a number of questions already prepared, but we also have Mentimeter. And so I'll show you how to do that here in just a minute, where you can submit questions, or you can also raise your hand and ask questions. So, Laura, did you take my clicker? I can push the space bar, that's fine. Okay, no problem. All right, so we'll start right here with Pradeep.
Hi, I'm Pradeep Pramanik. I serve as the Director for the Proposal Development Unit, which is a part of the Research Development Office led by John Horowitz. So as he mentioned, and even as Maladin mentioned, we are part of the ORI, and we serve faculty to put together large proposals over $1 million. And part of our mandate is to make sure that the faculty puts together the best proposal forward, and we do that by providing services in terms of conceptualizing ideas, putting together teams, facilitating the process, budget development, writing non-technical sections, editing, formatting, and even taking care of some of the administrative burdens that are associated with proposal development.
Thank you.
I'm Emily Callahan. I'm the Research Planning Manager with the Office of Research and Innovation's Research Development Office. And today I'm here sort of representing the internal funding programs, but I also help oversee our limited submission opportunities as well. But so these internal funding programs that I'm sure a lot of you are interested in are those NC State sponsored funding opportunities for seed funding, equipment acquisition, other types of research infrastructure. And so these programs are meant to be responsive to the needs of our faculty and to sort of give you that the resources that you need to leverage bigger grants, other types of external funding. So it's sort of NC State's investment in you guys so that you can continue on it with your research careers and have productive research opportunities.
Thank you.
I'm Diane Chapman, and I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Faculty Development, and I'm representing the Office of Faculty Development, the Office of Faculty Affairs. We basically do a lot of stuff around teaching and learning and helping you all, but that also includes the scholarship of teaching and learning. But we also do a lot of programming around career development, which will support you in all facets of your career in order to make you successful, not only in your scholarship, but in all facets of faculty work.
Hi there, I'm Megan Kerr, and I'm in the College of Sciences, where I am the Director of Research Administration in the College Research Office. And there you heard a little bit about it in Sherry's talk this morning and in Genevieve's as well. So I have a pre- and post-award staff that will work with you to help you submit proposals to a variety of funding possibilities. And then once awarded, we work with you on your just-in-time documents and also on managing all the post-award administration of your projects.
Good morning. My name is Leah Burton, and I'm Director of the Partnership Office for NC State. Our job is fairly simply stated to create collaborations between our faculty and students and corporate and government partners. And so we recruit all of the companies to Centennial Campus and manage those relationships. There's somewhere between 70 and 75 companies located on Centennial, employing, I think now around 5,500 people in those companies. And then we work with and manage relationships with companies that may not be located on Centennial Campus but do require a multidisciplinary approach to relationship management. And so I think that you might have already met two people in my office, Keisha Demps and Nancy Washington. Nope, Nancy Farrow. I let that one slip. It came too direct. And I hope you'll get to know them if you didn't already.
Good morning, everybody. Good to see you here today. I am Paola Stein. I am the Associate Dean for Research and Innovation in the College of Education, and I believe I'm representing the Associate Deans for Research at this table. And as Associate Dean for Research, I got to work with the wonderful people in the research office, and in partnership with them, try to think about what are great opportunities that match our faculty expertise. So that's really a big part, is trying to find that match. And once we have a match, then help faculty generate the best and most competitive possible proposal. And then we help you spend the money, because you're going to get that award too.
Okay, great. Thank you, panel. Just to make this clear in case it wasn't, although both Paola and Megan are representing specific colleges, it might differ slightly at your college, but this is to give you their perspectives that each of your colleges have research administration offices, of course, and associate deans for research. And so they'll be able to kind of speak generally on behalf of their colleges, but always make sure that you go back to your colleges and check some of this information out, because each college differs slightly here. We talked about how decentralized we can be at NC State, and so the rules and the way things work may differ. So just as a note for that. So for those of you who weren't here maybe earlier and didn't know about Mentimeter, or Menti, I'll refer to the shortened version. You can go to the website at the top here, www.menti.com, and you can actually submit questions if you don't want to raise your hand and ask them, and we'll answer them as we go through. Does anyone have a question that they want to kick off the panel this morning? No one? Okay, I am happy to get going. I actually want to start with Leah, if you don't mind, because earlier we had some questions about collaborating with industry for an earlier panel. And so can you talk a little bit about how your office works with faculty to get them started working with industry, and how a faculty member might begin doing that?
Yeah. So when we're working with companies, sometimes they are interested in sponsoring research, but they could be interested in other kinds of engagement. And so, the way that we are interfacing with those companies is first trying to learn what the goals are that the company has for their engagement with NC State. It may be talent-driven, it may be research and development-driven, and so once we know that, and we know the areas of technology that they are interested in, that's the point at which we are then matching them with some of our faculty. And we're introducing the two sides. We're creating an opportunity for conversation around the needs that the company has and the needs and the opportunities to work with that faculty and his or her colleagues and or graduate students. And so, one of the things that I always encourage our faculty to think about when they are working with industry is that, of course, they're going to be more focused toward the applied side, usually, not always, but just making a generalization more on the applied side, and also to think about opportunities to maybe create phases of your research with the company, because that will help a company be a little bit more comfortable with the risk that they are going to encounter in working with our faculty. So if you have a project that could be in 3 phases, for instance, and you're able to articulate that to a company, that seems very approachable. Because at the base level, most companies are still not doing research with universities, and we're a little bit of a foreign entity for them in that way. There are all types of people at this university who have great interactions with industry, but our research, of course, is still majority sponsored by the federal government. And so you can see then that lots of companies just aren't comfortable with that. That's our job, is to help, create that relationship, and then keeping those things in mind about the goals that an industry partner might have will help you be more successful in your interactions with them.
Thank you, Leah. So we have a question already on Menti, and I'm going to expand it a little bit. It's specifically for PDU, but I think that both the college and other people on the panel can respond as well. It says PDU is a great resource, but probably focused on the highest value impact proposals. So I think really some of the largest proposals for NC State. What is the minimum requirements for PDU to work with researchers on a proposal? And the way I want to expand is I think it'd be good for the college representatives and even for faculty development to talk about other resources that both the colleges and faculty development provide to support the faculty members as they're writing proposals and doing their scholarship. So, but Pradeep, will you answer the first part of this?
Sure. So the PDU has been in the works for the last, how many years now? 2004 when we started it. And the minimum threshold that we usually ask for is $1 billion in total, at least. But our average proposal size has been about $8 to $10 million or even more. So in response to your question, but sometimes we do take on and help faculty proposals that are very strategic in nature, that has a big impact for the university down the road. So please reach out to me or any of my, there are a couple of people here from the PDU. Please raise your hand there. Please reach out to any one of us, Molly Pointe and Matt Hooker. so that we could get into a dialogue with you regarding what the PDU can do with your proposal. But in response to your question, it's at least $1 million in total.
Okay, so
Okay. So I love this question because it actually came up at our college research office table over there with my colleagues, and Keena so eloquently responded, and I'm going to just use that and say we're here to help you with any proposal, no matter what size it is, or what scale or what scope it is. We're going to help you in the college research offices getting that proposal so it can be the most compliant and most successful that is possible. So my best advice is to reach out to us early and often and communicate to us your ideas, your thoughts, what sponsors you're thinking of working on. In my college in particular, I have 3 full-time pre-board people who will work with you one-on-one. They'll work with your team. We'll come and do a session for your department if you want us to. We work closely as well with the PDU on those larger proposals because there's also parts of that the college needs to help the PDU with as well. So we work in collaboration a lot. And then I will also say if you're working across colleges, we're kind of like your link, the college research offices, to help you kind of connect the dots. So you can think of us like hyphens. If you don't know where to start, you could start with your college research office, and we can hopefully help you to find where you need to go next.
Paolo, you want to add?
Yeah. So, yes, the college research offices are great, and we don't discriminate in any way, shape, or form for proposal type, proposal size, FNA, no FNA. We will help you. And so the research office is your friend and the place to go, and they do wonderful work. I think what associate deans add to the work that they are doing is we can help you consider the role of that funding in your career trajectory. Associate deans can help you think about, what are some prestigious opportunities, what are other opportunities. I love that they use the word funding and not just research proposal, because funding comes in many ways. It can be funding for the infrastructure upon which you do research. You can be professional faculty engaged in the scholarship of teaching, and there is lots of funding in that regard too. So I would say, yes, go to your research office as soon as you have an idea, interact with them, make sure they know you, make sure they know what you're interested in, and then use your associate dean as a partner, as a thinking partner about how it fits my career, what are some opportunities for me here, what are pros and cons of different funding sources, and that kind of thinking. In my college, I also read. I will read a 2-pager if you have it ahead of time. I don't read it the day before it's due, because at that point you do not want my feedback, honestly. You don't want me to say the day before, I don't really get it, what are you trying to do? So if you have your 2-pager ahead of time, which I strongly encourage everybody, that's where you start. You have to be able to write a very clear, jargon-free 2 pages about the work you want to do. Once you have that, I will read that. I'll help you meet with a program officer if you need to discuss it, and really provide you with the support to then transform that in a true proposal. I believe a proposal is just fleshing out those 2 pages again and again and again. So the main ideas have to be there. If a reader doesn't know what you're doing by the end of those 2 pages, they won't go any further. So partner with your associate deans to help you craft that initial proposal, initial idea of what you want to do, be very clear, and then you write the rest.
Diane, do you want to add?
Yeah, I just want to add, I think you can think of our unit as a way of supporting everything. Like, we're not the experts in proposal writing, but research, scholarship, and innovation doesn't occur in a vacuum. It occurs throughout your career. So you can think of us as supporting that. We have writing retreats that give you space and time to dedicate to writing proposals. We offer the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning institutes that'll get you kick-started with some small funding, but also kick-started in the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. We offer reading circles that allow you to meet other people on campus and get started to make connections for interdisciplinary research, and that has already happened through those things. So I think of our office as a way to kind of map out your career and make connections.
Can I say one more?
Absolutely, go for it.
I want to add to the writing piece and the writing retreat and strongly encourage you to think about that. I actually wrote a chapter about this for my field, which is math education. Most of our doctoral programs in many fields, they don't train us to write grant. They really train us to write papers. And papers and grants are completely different styles of how to write. So it is something that is learned, and you can learn, but you need somebody who is helping you tune your writing craft to write a good proposal. I recently worked with a colleague, for example. He is in the vet school. I understand nothing about his research, but I can read his proposal and say, I don't follow it. You know, you need to be able to explain it to me. And we sat down, and until he could explain to me what he wanted to do, I didn't let him go, because I'm like, I'm kind of smart. I should understand what you're doing, even if it's not my field. So learning to write proposals is key. I would strongly encourage you to do that. I'll finish up, because I know I'm talking too much. But I like to think about writing papers is gray. It's the details, is the theory, is the nuances of where it works and where it doesn't. Writing proposal is a sale pitch, black and white, with sparkles on top. So you have to learn to do that.
Thank you. Emily, can you talk a little bit about the internal funding and some of these that are offered, and the best way for faculty to determine if there are any restrictions in applying for these, and where they might find these programs?
Sure. So I guess first thing, sorry, if you haven't already, go to our funding webpage and sign up to receive communications from our office, because this is where we disseminate any information about funding opportunities, and of course those internal funding opportunities that are currently available. We'll always share that information there. And also on our internal funding website, we have a page dedicated to all of our programs. Of course, we have the open opportunities that are currently available at the top, and I have a sheet if you guys stop by my networking table of some of those open opportunities, but that's the best place to go. Our website gives a nice overview of what the opportunity is, some of the key stakeholders, you know, what the amounts for funding might be. And then, of course, we have the request for proposals on that webpage as well. And so I would recommend, you know, reviewing that document. For a lot of these programs, we've done various cycles of these and have sort of been able to proactively answer a lot of the questions that we get in terms of, you know, what are the eligibility requirements, who can be PI, who can be co-PI, what types of projects are supported, is there a cost match that's required. So this stuff is all going to be outlined in your RFP. And then, of course, if you have questions from there, reach out to us, and we're happy to talk about, you know, specific project ideas that you have that may or may not fit with a particular program, and maybe point you in the right direction of a program that might be a better fit for your idea.
Okay, great, thank you. Any questions from the audience? I want to make sure. We have to have a stare down? No one?
It's called wait time.
I can wait. Really? No one? I want to make sure I'm answered. This is a great panel you have in front of you. No questions? Yes.
One of the questions I really appreciate that people ask me is, what are some pitfalls that new folks fall into regarding my area or functional area?
Okay.
Or recommendations they have?
Okay, so for anyone who's watching remotely, the question was, for each of the areas, are there pitfalls that the panel has observed and how to avoid those potentially, right? So are there any pitfalls that you are aware of or recommendations you would have for people who are new? I've got someone who's ready.
Yeah.
Go for it, Megan.
So I'm just going to follow up on what Paula said so well. Don't wait till the last minute, right? So the earlier you can start planning and preparing and thinking about this, fleshing out your ideas, solidifying your budgets, having a really firm plan so that it's not just last minute and the day before I'm handing you my 2-pager and I'm getting all this feedback and it feels overwhelming. So really dedicating the time within your very busy schedules and all your commitments to carve out to put into this proposal, and then that's going to help our team support you better. It's going to give you the space to really think through your plan, your roster, and all of that. So I would just say, like, planning early.
Okay, great. Anyone else?
Go on.
Okay. One of the pitfalls we often see is that faculty don't have a plan. The plan is to get tenure, but besides that, there's no specific plan. And what we see is at all stages of a faculty career, early career, mid-career, and late career, you need a plan to get to the next thing. So we offer career planning workshops, career mapping workshops. We also have the NCFDD, which is the National Center for Faculty Development and Diversity, that has a lot of resources in it, and you all have free memberships as a result of our institutional membership. And on our listserv, we push out a lot of not only our own offerings, but our partner offerings. And so my advice is to engage in career mapping or career planning to get to your next goal, and don't just assume it's going to happen.
Okay, thank you. Leah?
To me, the biggest mistake that our faculty or faculty at any university make in working with industry partners is thinking of them and treating them like a government funding source. And they behave almost nothing like a government funding source. And so layered underneath that then are management of expectations. A company is expecting that somehow the research that they fund out of any kind of faculty engagement will impact their business in some way. And they're going to have different ways of looking at what that ROI is, but they're going to have an ROI in mind. And so, we want to be careful about the promises that we make, because a company will encourage you to make all kinds of promises that the federal government, in a funding source wouldn't necessarily, push you to make or encourage in that way. So setting of expectations, maintaining of those expectations, and also just, thinking of an industry partner in a different way than you would a federal funding source.
I think a pitfall is when you end up working for the funding agencies, when actually what you want to do is have the funding agencies work for you. So that comes in two ways in my mind, this pitfall. One is when you do work, when you accept funding and you have to do so much work just to make it happen that perhaps you are not getting what you really need because you're spending all your time in fulfilling some of that work. And that's one way where you end up working for them. The other way I think faculty end up working for the funding agencies is when you chase the money and that doesn't build up to any program. And so you have this money from here, you did A, and that money from there, you did B, that money from there, you did C. And when I look at ABC, I don't see the coherence. And then how are you going to tell the story of the program you're building? So don't work for them. Make them work for you. What is this small part of your program that fits here? And then there's another part of your program that fits there. And so your program comes first. And then you are feeding the little parts. Of course, with a little tweak, sometimes you use their words instead of a word you were using, or so you are paying attention to what they want to fund, but then you're thinking about your program all the time from this overarching perspective.
Thank you. Pradeep, do you have any advice of your
All
years of success?
all of the above, basically. I would just add a quick comment regarding proposal development, especially for our early career faculty here. When they think about putting together a proposal, be sure to understand the sponsor and where the funding agencies, what the priorities are, and read the RFP very carefully, because most of the RFPs or the solicitations that come out in recent times have come out, are very prescriptive on what they're going to fund and what they're not going to fund. So just putting together a proposal which is an extension of your dissertation, or is okay, but we've got to be very, very careful and in terms of aligning the proposals to the priorities of the sponsor.
Pradeep, I think you might be best to answer this question, of course, if there's anyone else that wants to add to it. It says, how do you find others who've been successful at funding from a specific RFP? So I think they're looking for advice, maybe for someone who's been successful at getting a specific type of award.
The PDU can help you with that, to finding partners within NC State. And since we have been working with a lot of faculty over the years and with other faculty from other institutions, we have a general idea of doing what. But again, the science is changing so fast, and we have new faculty, new ideas, new disciplines coming together to form teams. So start the dialogue with us early enough so that we could help you conceptualize what your idea is and what your proposal concept is. But we do have tools within the PDU and the Research Development Office that would help you match the research expertise you're looking for with a few faculty here doing similar work. So we could help you with that to some extent. But I think it's very important to know what your research community is by participating at the national conferences or the regional conferences, and kind of watching the publications that are coming out and who has been more prolific in that area. And then as an early career faculty, make sure that you reach out to those people to get funding down the road, being part of a team.
Thank you. We have about 2 minutes left, and I wanted to give the entire panel a chance. I know there's another question, what we're going to do with these, we have a lot of questions actually that are coming through Menti, and what we're going to do is respond to them all and collect them and as kind of a frequently asked questions, because this has been a really great tool. But I want to give the whole panel a chance to, if there's one or two, like either an upcoming workshop, event, funding opportunity, something you think that would be useful for the group to know about, to kind of go down the line and highlight that if you think that'd be helpful. And if there's not, that's fine. But I just think you've got an audience. If there is something you, and we don't have to go down the line if you want to raise your hand, however that, if you weren't prepared with that. Yeah, go for it, Pradeep.
So please mark your calendars, and there's a flyer there on a networking table here. On March 25th, we're going to host our next NSF Career Workshop. The seats are filling up fast. Sometimes it's sold out. Well, every year for the past 3-4 years it has sold out. And so we haven't been able to accommodate everybody to those workshops. But we do that to help early career faculty prepare for the NSF career proposals that are generally due in June or July every year. And then the number 2 is that stay tuned. Our next series of NIH grantsmanship series is going to be announced soon. Molly was instrumental in putting together the series for the last fiscal year, and we're going to do something very similar, but much more specific in terms of proposal development related to NIH proposals.
Anybody else? Diane, do you?
Yes, mark your calendars for February 28th. That is our probably one of our premier events, our Teaching and Learning Symposium, where we'll have poster sessions from all types of faculty on their scholarship of teaching and learning ideas. We'll have concurrent sessions and some roundtable sessions, a lunch, and a keynote speaker about using accessibility in your classes, so universal course design. We also are offering 2 career mapping workshops this semester with Vice Provost Catherine Stewart. They are currently full and waitlisted, but we'll be continuing to offer those because of the demand. So if nothing else, sign up for our listserv on our webpage.
So right now in our college, we have our pre-award or budgeting 101 class going on. So I would encourage you just to check on my website if you're in my college or in your other college's websites, because there's probably some localized trainings going on as well. And then we will also have a college-specific NSF career workshop coming up in April or May as well, and Anne in my office will be leading that part of it. And then another big deadline that I'm encouraging people to think about is the new NSF PAPG guidelines, which drop June 1st, for lack of a better word, and just some preparations that might be needed as far as getting used to the new systems that the library kind of touched on this morning. So keep the June 1st date in your head too.
Let's see, I'll mention a couple of tools that we have. First of all, of course, you can go to the Centennial Campus website and get a list of all of the companies that are located on Centennial Campus, and call our office if you would like an introduction to one of those companies. We're happy to do that. And we are also getting ready to officially launch a new portal that we've been creating called, very creatively, Partner Portal. Imagine that. But this will be a place where companies will be able to, through our office, will be able to post opportunities to work with them. So it may be a research RFP, but it may be a company that is looking for experts in a particular area. And of course, we've always made those introductions, but sometimes, and of course you all are new, we may not be familiar with your research area of expertise. And so this is an opportunity for our faculty to be able to see those areas where our companies are looking for input. There's some resources on there for faculty as well. And so we are going to push those opportunities out through the Associate Deans of Research and Associate Deans for Academic Affairs. And so how they handle that, within their colleges will be up to each one of them, but we will be pushing those opportunities out that way.
Okay.
One final.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Final plug,
Go for
just
it.
to remind everyone, I know I mentioned this earlier, but make sure you sign up for our funding listserv.
Absolutely.
So that you can get those important communications about open opportunities, limited submissions, internal funding, scholar awards, and other opportunities that might be of interest to you guys. So make sure you sign up for that.
Before we wrap up the panel, I do want the opportunity to answer this question because I think it's a great one. If a faculty member is pursuing funding from a federal source, is it worth the time, effort, and cost to travel to meet with a program officer in person, or is it okay to call? What do you think? Pradeep? Paula? What do you guys think?
I think it's definitely worth talking to the program officer whether you call or you go in person. I think going in person has power. It connects a face to a name to a place. So if you have the opportunity, I would go. It is part of their job description to talk to folks, so they should do it. However, if you can't go, I would schedule the phone call. So I guess I'm a little saying, yes, you should go, but most important is you have to talk to the program officer either way. That's the key thing.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I think it's a two-way process, two-part process here. First of all, when you have an idea, I would suggest you to write up a brief concept paper, a page at max, and then send it to the program officer who's been listed as in the solicitation. And so that the program officer is aware of what you're proposing and provide feedback. And the part two of it is to continue to engage with the program officer, and then a visit, a face-to-face visit. is going to pay more dividends down the road. And that way, you have engaged the program officer rather than reaching out and knocking on the door and says, I'm here to meet with you to talk. So that's, probably the program officers, in my experience, are very busy people, I know. But they're willing to spend the time with you. They're looking for great ideas. They're looking to help faculty. So my recommendation is that this two-part process where you reach out first with your concept by email, and then follow it up through discussions, phone conversations, and then finally a follow-up visit before you submit the proposal.
Yeah, so I'm really glad, Pradeep, that you spelled this out. So when I say go talk to a program officer, it's not like that, right? It is really prepare your one-pager, schedule the appointment, talk over the phone, et cetera. So I'm glad he spelled out. Don't jump on the plane and knock on somebody's door. It doesn't work like that. In our college, we are in the process of organizing a trip to talk to different program officers. We are going to spend about a month and a half before faculty engage with that, helping prepare the one-pager, because you want to be able to write that, convey your idea, so when you get there, you're ready. So there is a lot of work that happens before that moment. So thank you, Pradeep, for spelling that out.
And thank you to our panel. We really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you.
We're going to do one more Mentimeter activity as we're switching out the panel, but if I could ask my faculty mentoring panelists to come on up on stage. Uh-oh, where'd it go? Okay. So I really like this question, especially before our next networking break. Is there someone you met or a table you visited during the networking session you think others should visit? This will help them for their next session. Global research. I know I saw a ton of people talking with Andrew over here at OIT. I saw a big group around the shared core research facilities. There was a big group over at the college research administration table. Undergraduate research. All right. I definitely encourage all of you again to try to make it to all the tables during the lunch hour. You'll have a full hour over lunch, so you should have plenty of time. You should have plenty of time to meet with everybody you'd like to see today. But we will go ahead and move forward.
Hello, everyone. Long time, since I've seen you. Welcome back. Welcome to our panel. Thank you. I feel like you're far away, but that's all right. We're going to do the.
Should we
I
slide
come
over?
sit with you instead? So it feels more comfortable. I know. Can we do that? Is that mic on? Okay. As long as this thing reach. I don't. Yeah. We'll do that. That feels better. Yeah. Plus, I've been standing for a while and I have heels on. Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? All right. Great. Perfect. All right. So we're going to do this is our faculty mentoring panel. This is an opportunity for you to ask other faculty members who have been here at NC State all your questions. We're going to do the same thing again. We're going to ask each of our members here to introduce themselves, the college, maybe how long you've been here at NC State, maybe if you started somewhere else. I don't know that, actually, for all of you. And then we'll go through, and we have, can you not hear me? Okay, sorry. Better? Can you hear me in the back now? Okay, great. And then, of course, I have a series of questions here, but please submit your questions on Mentimeter or raise your hand and ask your questions directly, okay? So we will start here with you, Joy.
Great. So, good morning. Is it still morning? Yes? Mm-hmm. All right.
We're still here in the back, okay?
Can y'all hear me okay? Okay, good. Good. All right, so I'm Joy Gales. I am a professor in the College of Education in the higher ed program, and I've been here since 2007, so it still feels like yesterday. But that's about a good, 13 years or so. I started my career as a tenure track assistant professor at Florida State University. I was there for 5 years, and then I moved here in 2007. Great. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Owen Duckworth. I'm a professor in the Department of Crop and Soil Sciences. I've also been here since 2007, so 13 years. I started here, and it also feels like yesterday.
Good morning. My name is Curtis Williams. I am in the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department. I started, well, technically, I started at NC State in 2001, but I was a graduate student at the time. And I went through, did my master's, did my PhD, and actually started on the faculty in 2008.
I'm Jeff Yoder. I'm in the Department of Molecular Biomedical Sciences at the College of Veterinary Medicine. I have been here since 2004. Came in as assistant professor tenure track. Prior to that, I was at the University of South Florida for 2 years as a tenure track assistant faculty member.
Okay, great. All right, so before I get started, are there any questions from the audience that you guys want to kick off with? I always want to give you a chance to make sure we're asking your questions. Per usual, it's like I'm staring at a group of undergraduates staring back at me. Okay, so we'll start with the easy one. Will you guys talk a little bit about your experience building your reputation earlier in your career? How do you get started? How do you do that? And we'll just kind of, whoever wants to start, we'll let you guys kind of decide. We don't have to go down the line. Does anyone have a burning desire to start?
I'll start, that's
okay.
fine.
Thank you, Owen.
So I think this is a tiered answer because there's different audiences for building your reputation to that you all need to address for getting tenure. So the first and easiest is like within your college, because you're probably going to meet everybody in your department, but then your college has got to kind of know about you to promote you and move you forward. So you should get out there and mix with different departments and maybe try to get on some college committees that aren't too onerous. We'll get to saying no in a little while. But to basically introduce yourself and to people in other departments and also your college administration. In your field, I think you have to go to whatever the major meetings are to try to meet people in your field who are going to be the people who write letters for you and also are going to be potential collaborators. And then there's a whole other level of international that I think you have to start to build towards as well. So I think there's should be some effort to either do some international outreach or maybe some international conferences as you get to that stage of your career, depending on what your field is. So that might not be something you do in your first year, but as you get towards tenure or as you start to move forward in that sort of just beyond it kind of realm, that's the kind of thing that's going to get you a lot of points, I think, in a lot of different fields. So I would suggest maybe moving in that direction when you're comfortable with getting those other two boxes of am I well known in my college and in the university, and am I well known sort of in my field domestically.
Okay. Joy?
Yeah, I I'm going to be a little transparent here.
Go for it.
When I started my tenure track position, I had no idea what I was doing. And I was trying to balance it all and figure it out at the same time. And somewhere along the way, I think I struck a balance, right? Because you don't really know, like when you're first starting out, if what you're doing makes a difference. And for me, that was super important because, you know, yeah, you have to write, get grants, but for me, it was, you know, if I was doing things that didn't really, like I didn't know who was reading my work. Like, you know, you publish, but you don't really know. I know now that there was an article that was just published that one of the first papers that I wrote is the second most downloaded paper in that journal, and this journal has a long history. But I didn't know that when I wrote it. And so I think what I was doing, even though I was shooting in the dark, was trying to do things that I was passionate about. And anytime that you connect passion with research, something powerful happens. And it's hard to do that because you're focused on teaching, service, writing, taking care of yourself and your family. And so my suggestion is to find a support network, to find balance. I often had lofty ideals like, I'm the new kid on the block. Everybody's going to come and help me. No, everybody was busy. And so you have to sometimes make those connections and not take the stance, nobody cares about me. They care about you, but just everybody's just doing their own thing. And they don't know that you're struggling because you look pretty good. You're all sitting here now looking great, right? But inside it's just like, oh my God, right? So you have to communicate and let people know. I do a lot of research on faculty development, and just to reassure in fact, like the overwhelming majority of faculty coming in have no idea, or they feel like they're unprepared to do this work because you didn't really learn how to be a professor when you were in grad school, right? And so there's some professional development that you need, and I'll talk a little bit more about how to get that later. And so it's okay. And I just want to say that, like, you got to do all these things, and there are ways, but you have to go out and kind of seek the ways in terms of how to manage all the things so that you can get to the point of establishing a national reputation and doing work that really inspires you. And if it inspires you, 9 times out of 10, it's probably going to inspire somebody else. But you can't let all the things get in the way of that. I guess that's my point.
Can I add one thing onto that? So I would echo everything that's been said. And when you're going to conferences or meetings or workshops, I would recommend that you try to get yourself integrated into those programs, whether it's chairing a session or making sure that you're putting in abstracts to give a presentation, whether it be an oral presentation or poster presentation, but you need to get yourself out there and known because you're going to be going to these conferences and meetings with your scientific peers nationally. So these are the individuals who are going to be reviewing your manuscripts and reading your grant proposals. These are the people that you want them to get to know you and your research. So they're, you know, if you're more introverted and you want to go to a meeting and just hide in the back of the room and then go back to your hotel room, that's not a good strategy. You need to force yourself to, when you go to meals, sit down next to people you don't know and start a conversation. So you never know what's going to come out of that. So for some individuals, that can be a really good strategy. Or if there's a program officer or someone from a funding agency is at that conference, see if you can get yourself to have lunch at the same table with that individual to start up an informal conversation about your research ideas. There are a lot of opportunities at conferences and meetings that I think are underutilized by junior faculty.
I guess the only thing that I would add is the idea that, you know, just like the regular population, all faculty are different. You're going to have different personalities, you're going to have different strengths, you're going to have different weaknesses. And I think a key aspect is to be able to identify those weaknesses, kind of like, you know, as Jeff pointed out, but also make sure that you play on your strengths. One thing that I would say is that, you know, there are some things that over the life of your career you're going to do wrong, but there are likely many more things that you can do right. So making sure that you take advantage of many of the opportunities that come to you is going to be extremely important. And some of these may play, for example, to your strengths. So one example would be back in, I don't know, it was 2009, 2010. One of the faculty in my department, she noted I work in interdisciplinary research. So I do modeling of biological systems, and doing modeling of plant systems in electrical engineering is very different. But a call came up for EFRI, Emerging Frontiers in Research and Innovation, I think, for EFRI ideas, EFRI topics. Now, I'm a first, second year assistant professor. I felt I had no business writing anything to suggest to anybody that this should be a topic for any type of emerging frontier in research and innovation. But I told her that I would do it, so I did it. And in doing so, my submission actually got selected for a presentation at NSF. So I'm a second year assistant professor, and now I have to give a presentation in front of all of these different program managers. And safe to say, they actually liked it. So all of a sudden now, I became known for, one of these individuals working in plant systems biology and engineering. Got asked to do a workshop by NSF program managers and yada, yada, yada. Have been okay in terms of, what I've been able to do. And it was from taking advantage of that one opportunity. And again, trying to utilize my strengths in terms of conveying and expanding aspects of electrical engineering in the field of plant systems biology, and did something with it. So I would say make sure that you also identify those key opportunities where you can leverage your strengths to be able to take advantage and grow your reputation.
Thanks, everybody. Kranos, we're going to stay with you for just a second because there's a question in Menti, and I know that you actually just described it, but you have some experience in this area. It's asking about successes and failures related to co-teaching or cross-disciplinary collaboration, research. Talk a little bit about successes and failures in this kind of area.
Yeah.
Or what you're I'm sure I know others on the panel have as well, but you might as well kick it off.
Yeah, so a lot of my research, as I said, I do research in modeling of biological systems, but I do not do experiments. So I don't have a wet lab. So I do primarily the computational modeling. So I have to depend on colleagues to essentially run the experiments, test the models, and basically, return us back to data. So that means that a lot of my research is collaborative, and that comes with a lot of I wouldn't say issues, just things that you have to be aware of. Just the notion of making sure that when you do collaborative research, that you do, like Owen said earlier, get the recognition that is necessary in your department, in your college, and in your field, that this is a thing, this is an area that without you, it would not happen, it would not work. So making sure that that is something that you take advantage of and you make sure it's clear becomes apparent. Also, identifying good collaborators. Now, knock on wood, I've been particularly fortunate to be able to interact with very good people in this field. And these are not only people who are good research-wise, but just are good colleague-wise. But again, if you're kind of a good person, you tend to attract good people, hopefully. But if you don't, like I said, some things you're gonna do wrong. You just kick them to the curb and try again. But you can always identify individuals, especially here. From the chancellor down, they've done an excellent job at promoting interdisciplinary research and hiring faculty that really operate in that vein. So that becomes something that if you put yourself out there, it'll be advantageous for you to do. Co-teaching, I do co-teach one class with a faculty member in plant biology. That is always a challenge. Not so much from the faculty point of view, because I said, most of the people I work with are really nice, but from a student perspective. So we have a class that's cross-listed between electrical engineering and plant biology, which are two of the most different students that you can ever find, ever. But it just takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of patience and understanding with the students to be able to shape the curriculum such that both students from electrical engineering and from plant biology can get the most out of it. So, that would be my experience with regards to that.
Others on the panel want to talk about co-teaching or?
I could just make a comment on collaborations.
Sure.
And so I've had many collaborations, most very successful. There have been a couple where there have been challenges. And a lot of that usually comes down to expectations, where there's no discussion up front of the expectations of the two collaborating entities, as far as what are the expected outcomes and who's getting the credit. So there are strategies you can go through to try to alleviate some of these issues, which in hindsight I wish I had known at the time. But you can even create documents where you're saying, okay, before we start this project, what do you envision the outcome to be? Do you expect there to be publications that will come from this? And if so, who's going to be the first author? Who's going to be the last author? There'll be some people in the middle. And a lot of the issues I've had in the past was dealing with personality differences and expectations of authorship, which was never discussed up front. And that can be, if there's 3 different groups working together, you can only have one first author and one senior author. And so those can be issues that you'll need to deal with. And the best strategy is to try to have honest discussions up front before you even begin the project of like, okay, what is the plan for publication down the road? What is the plan for future grant proposals down the road? Who's going to be the lead PI? Who's going to be a co-investigator? That's my 2 cents on that.
Anyone else? Okay, we've got Owen, no? Okay, I couldn't tell. It's hard to see. If you...
I'll just say that working with people is great. Science has got to the point where you basically need to, in certain issues, work with other people because you can't have enough expertise to deal with all sides of the issue particularly for some of these big issues that are sort of pressing society at this point. Having said all that, if you're working with other people, you're inherently dependent on them. And if they don't deliver, or if there's friction between you, it can be very stressful early on. I would say, again, be careful with who you work with to some degree, but it is definitely a strategy to go out there and really attack big problems and can really do exciting science. But at the same time, I would also say that most of you are very new and probably have great new ideas that other people haven't had. Do not neglect your own passion pet projects and your sort of single investigator or small group advance to just go run off into big things because you think it's what you should do. You should try to balance both, would be my suggestion on that.
And I'll just add,
Please.
I wrote a piece in Inside Higher Ed about collaborating, and so I'll send it to you. I don't know if there's a listserv.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a website, and we're going to put a lot of resources there. And any questions that ultimately don't get answered today, we're going to compile them, put them there, and share them out as well.
So a lot of what I talk about and suggest in that piece has been iterated here already. But I will say it's important for you to understand the culture of your department, your program. Because in the College of Education, there's a thing called establishing yourself as an independent scholar, right? And so there needs to be evidence of that. And so if you do too much collaboration and you're always the 4th or 5th author, that can come back in not so good ways when it comes time for tenure and promotion, right? So striking the balance, I think, is super important, and having conversations and looking at dossiers of people who have gone up before you so that you can see what that looks like in terms of successful cases that have gone through, what's the balance, how much independent research did they do versus collaboration. And it's hard, this work has to be done in community because that's where you get the best results. So, and you have to balance that. And so just be careful there. And there's a great book called Crucial Conversations. And it gives us strategies for how to have difficult dialogues with people, particularly those who have more power and influence than you do. And there's a way to do that. And I read the book and I'm like, man, I should have read this years ago. Could have saved some relationships. But, so there are tools out there to help you, have these conversations that are not so easy, but necessary to have. And so I'll send you that recommendation too.
Thank you very much.
Let me add one more thing, Jennifer.
Yeah, please.
And this kind of culminates what was also mentioned earlier, making sure that in your collaborations that you are able to identify what is unique to you. Collaborating with a group that is very similar to you is going to be extremely challenging. With me, typically when I collaborate, there's no one else doing what it is that I'm doing. So if I have to be, for example, a co-corresponding author, or one of my students is a co-first author or a second author, it's clear that if I'm working with someone in a molecular biology lab and this paper is on modeling, even though my student is a second author, it's clear that I was the one that did the modeling. So it's easier to convey to a department or to my college or in my dossier that this is my contribution to this particular project. So just keep that in mind, as you're going through in terms of having those discussions, identifying those key aspects, those key points that are unique to you, and making sure that it is clear that, one, the publications pan out that way, and two, it's communicated that way in your activity report.
All right, some great advice so far. We got a question in the back. Comment. You want to? Oh yeah, HR has a course on crucial conversations.
That's good to know.
Great, thank you. The next question on Menti is really related to a couple questions we talked about or wanted to talk about. It's related to balance, I think, and also all the responsibilities that faculty members have and are engaged in, all the activities, responsibilities. And so it's asking specifically about organizational strategies, right? And how do you be successful with all of these activities you're required to be involved in. I think it's also so it's balance, right? And then also one of the things we had talked about is like, when is it appropriate to say no? So I'm kind of throwing that all together here. And I want to start with you, Joy, if that's all right.
Yeah, so Diane Chapman, who is with the Office of Faculty Development, mentioned...
She's somewhere, or
she's
she's still here. Yeah, there we go.
She mentioned NCFDD. How many of you know about that? The National Center for Faculty Development and Diversity? Okay, not enough hands. You should know about it because it is the largest faculty development center in the country. And so there are over 100 institutional members, and we happen to be fortunate enough to be one of them. And so what that means is that you get to become a member for free because the Office of Faculty Development has already paid the bill for you. And so I'll share that resource with you as well.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it shows up in the Provost newsletter that comes out. Actually, one just came out today. And so what that is it's professional development for you. And so there are webinars there that you can watch at your own time in your own space. That there's a webinar on the art of saying no. There's an art to it, right? And there are ways to say no. Now, you can't say no to everything, but being strategic about when you say no and being able to communicate that will serve you well. And so you get tips and strategies for how to do that. There's also a Monday Motivator that comes out that kind of kicks off your week, gets you thinking about something that's relevant to you. There are guest expert webinars, and so I did one this past summer on moving from associate to full, because if you think mentoring is bad for junior faculty, it's real bad for mid-career faculty. And so, strategies and thinking about, how do you establish an international reputation? Like, what does that mean? And so it's helpful, and it gives you, there's a core curriculum webinar that talks about all the things, like planning is huge, but I spent the first part of my career like not really planning in a strategic kind of way. And so I started that mid-career, and it's made such a difference in how I approach my work. It gives me a space to say no, because I share my plan with my department chair and other faculty who are mentors to me. And the way I do it, I say, hey, you know what I'm about. If you ask me to do something that's within my wheelhouse, make it easy for me to say yeah. Because if you don't, then I'm gonna say no, because it's not in my wheelhouse, and you know what my wheelhouse is because I've already shared my strategic plan with you, right? So I'm gonna say no, because this isn't what I'm about right now, particularly if it's like real heavy service, like administrative, and that's not a part of your strategic plan. I often joke around and say, hey, that's not where I am right now. That's not the theme for my life. Ask me in about 5 years, I might say yes, right? Because that's where I may be, depending on what I put down for my plan. So if you haven't checked out the organization, I encourage you to do so. Again, it's free. Don't pay a dime. Go to the website, look up NC State, put your email address in, create a password, and voila, you have access to all the professional development that's there. And it's all designed to help you do what we all want to do, which is thrive in the academy. Like, we don't want to just be here and just get by. Like, we want to do some really great things, right? Yeah.
So I just have a quick, a recommendation. Raise your hand, new faculty, if you use Google Calendar to schedule events or some other device to schedule your calendars. So what my recommendation is you put down all the essential things you know you have to do. So if you've got to teach a class, that goes on your calendar. If you've got a departmental meeting, you put that down. And then before people start asking you to do other things, schedule time during the week that's your time to do writing. And you don't schedule anything else. This is hard to do. Like, I try to do this, but it's still hard to do because there are times where I want to have 3-4 hour block where I can focus on one thing because it's a really complicated question that I'm trying to get through. So that is my one piece of recommendation, is schedule times. And when someone says, oh, can you meet Thursday afternoon? You don't have to tell them what you're doing. Just say, no, I'm booked. I can't meet Thursday afternoon. I got another commitment. That commitment can be you. And keep that in mind as a junior faculty. Prioritize your own stuff.
Great. Anybody else?
So I would have a couple things to say on this, I think. First, on the no. We're all members of the academy. We're all kind of similar in terms of ranking here. You're empowered to say no to things. So don't be shy about it. You're going to become overcommitted quickly, most likely. Figure out what you actually want to do and say no to things that aren't going to be useful for you. You can't say no to all administrative things. Some things you have to do and you can't get around them, and some things that actually is strategic to do. But the ones that aren't, you should try not to do. Collaborations, you should do things you're interested in. But I found that when I was a young faculty member, if I ever was a young faculty member, when I was a junior faculty member, lots of people were legitimately trying to help me by engaging them in their research. But they didn't always understand what I did, and it wasn't always a great fit. You should say no if it's not something that's going to be strategic and help you. So if it's an opportunity that could grow into something, or it's an opportunity that you're really interested in, you're passionate about, you're going to do good science about, you should do it. But if not, everything comes at an opportunity cost to doing something else. And doing something else could be your own research. It could be finding some balance, right? So at some point, we're all talking about things you have to do here, and blocking off time and for writing and stuff like this. You're going to have to block off time to do whatever keeps you an actual sane human being, be it spending time with your family or exercising or whatever. You need to find that balance. So don't run yourself into the ground on this either, because you will burn out. And the last thing I would say, just as a other practical, completely after all that sort of theoretical stuff, a practical tip besides the Google Calendar, I would say, is stack meetings. Every time you change task, you probably lose about 10% of the time messing around, trying to get yourself back in the right frame of mind. So if you're trying to write, like, don't write for an hour, have a meeting, write for an hour, have a meeting. Stack all your meetings as much as you can in time. So have them back to back to back to back. It can be a little tiring, but what it does is it basically frees up the rest of your day and doesn't have you flipping back and forth between trying to write something and then getting in the mind to meet with a student, then getting in mind to meet with your department head, then getting back to writing and back and forth. It's a real easy tip to try to just keep yourself in one frame of mind.
Let's see. Well, first, let's see. The only things that I would add. So, it's never too late to learn something. And again, like I said earlier, sometimes you'll feel like you made mistakes. Sometimes you wish that you had done something a certain way. But there's always opportunity to learn. Like, I'm learning stuff today. And I think that's something that you need to be somewhat forgiving of yourself about. As you go through your day, just don't kick yourself for having felt like you missed an opportunity, or having felt like you haven't done something in the most effective way. Give yourself some kind of latitude. I sometimes don't consider it as work-life kind of balance. I consider it as like work-life trade-offs, where I have times where I'm just working like crazy, but then I try to schedule some type of downtime. So this comes back to trying to identify the schedule that keeps you energized and keeps you motivated. And that's going to be different for different people. Like Jeff said, maybe scheduling some time in the calendar, but that time could be writing, that time could be going to the gym. You could say, well, okay, I'm going to go to the gym no matter what. There were semesters where I was so burnt out that I was like, you know what, I'm only coming to campus 3 days a week. That's it. I'm going to find someplace else to work. And I would literally go to a coffee shop. These people thought I worked in the coffee shop. I was there I was there during changes in shifts. That I was there for so long. But at that point in time, that's what I needed to keep myself going, to keep myself energized, to keep myself working on papers. And I would interact with students, I would write emails, I would do all these different things, but I would do it at the coffee shop. So understanding yourself and identifying the things that will help you to stay motivated, and staying motivated is the key. If you continue to move forward, everybody is going to get there. It's when you become stagnant, you stop, you get unmotivated, that's when things start to go awry. As long as you keep yourself motivated and engaged, the likelihood of success increases.
Okay, great. So we have another question on Menti that says, suggestions for mid-career faculty who run out of steam and how to avoid that when you're junior. So kind of how to plan for that. And so it kind of follows up maybe what we've been talking about. And so who wants to kind of kick that one off? I mean, it's kind of, I think, a follow-on to what we've, is it planning and continuing what we've, and maybe Kranos on that very positive note you just ended? No, I'm just joking.
No, the thing is that it happens. Oftentimes, and we've talked about being overcommitted with things that, because you know the whole quadrant thing, you know, urgent and important, urgent and not important, you know, important and not urgent, blah, 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 blah. Oftentimes, even if you adhere to that, you can still get overcommitted on things that are good for you, that things that will lead to positive things, positive outcomes in terms of publications, in terms of grants, all these things. You can get overcommitted really, really quickly. But again, understanding that and trying to identify opportunities to separate yourself just a bit, energize yourself, and sometimes engage in things that also energize you. So for me, oftentimes that's, you know, these collaborative projects. Sometimes it's, you know, for the life of me, I don't know why, but teaching actually excites me. You know, I really get energized and motivated when I'm sitting in class. And, you know, that's just what it is. So sometimes I really start to engage in my class and engage my students as a mechanism for, you know, motivating myself. So I think, yeah, trying to identify opportunities.
This is a new question that's popped up, so don't let that confuse you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, trying to find opportunities for that, I think, is important.
Anybody else want to add? Sorry, go ahead, Joy.
So again, I'm going to be transparent. I feel like I've been
That's what this
transparent
is
the whole
for.
time. So, you know, I didn't do the early career stuff right, and I didn't do mid-career stuff, or air quotes, right either. I was one of those folks who, I was so beat down after the tenure process, I was tired. And I had to recover from what just happened to me, a lot of which I didn't understand, because there are a lot of challenges on the tenure track, and I didn't always have the language to explain what it was, and so I had to have some time to figure it out. And so I did find myself in a lull, and I knew though that I could not move toward full professor the same way that I did. Like, I couldn't sustain that. Like, I'm older, like I can't stay up past 9 o'clock if you paid me. Like, I gotta go to sleep. And so I just couldn't sustain it, because you know, early career, I was on the binging bus train. I wrote and I wore myself out, and then so much so that I didn't want to write again until I had another deadline. And so I was like, no, there's gotta be a better way. I cannot keep doing this. Like, it's not my best work. I don't want to keep doing it. And so so I had to find ways of sustaining myself, kind of what you were saying, over time. And that's where the planning came in. That's where blocking my schedule came in, and really getting serious. And here's the other reality. Like, you spend all of your time on the tenure track doing what kind of other people expect for you to do, right? To get tenure. And then once you are tenured and promoted, then there's an expectation that you choose a path. Right? And for me, like, I didn't even know what the options, like what all the options were in terms of what I could do. And so I had to take time to kind of figure that out. And I had to get used to the idea that I could choose. Like, that's a new skill I had to learn, and learning how to take a more empowered stance and determine for myself what I wanted my contribution to be for the next 5 or 6 years. And so learning how to do that early is good to kind of get you through the mid-career lull of sorts. But it's okay for professional development because, again, the expectation is you know all this stuff and you really don't. Every time you move to a different level, like now that I'm full professor, like I got to figure that out. Like I don't know how to be a full professor. Like I've never been one before. And so I don't even know what all the options are, but I'm starting to learn some really cool stuff in terms of what I want. And I got a long way to go before I can retire. So I got to like plan it out in stages in terms of what I want that to look like for the next 20 years or so. I feel like I got a whole nother career. But this time I want to be the person choosing. Like I want to be in the driver's seat. I want to control what that looks like. And so figuring out or learning how to take a more empowered stance, even as a junior scholar, will serve you well.
Great. Owen?
I love this question because it shows a lot of confidence, right?
Yes,
So
true.
you guys are all going to get
True.
tenure. You look like a great, smart group of people, and you're here, and means you're motivated, and you got hired here in the first place. So that's always, like, usually that's a great sign to begin with. But I love this because it kind of harkens forward, and no one knows what to do when they get tenure. For starters, the process is dragged out. You go through a vote, you put everything together, you wait a while, you go through a vote, you hear the first vote, it goes through another vote, you get another letter, then you have to wait around to find out what happens with some people who meet in Chapel Hill till you finally get it. And then you wait another 3 months, and then you finally get another letter that says, congratulations, you really are now promoted. So it is a process that essentially is set up in some ways to kind of take the joy and the party out of it. And then you're left in this situation where we're all on the same clock, right? You graduated from high school, you graduated from college, you got your PhD, you maybe did a postdoc, but every time you do things for a couple of years, you complete something, and then you move on to the next thing. So then you get tenure, and then you don't move on to the next thing. This is what you've been trying to do. You have your job. You could move somewhere else, but we hope you don't, because you've got tenure and you're great. So what do you do then? Well, it actually is kind of empowering after you get over that sort of fear. Like, you now are totally free to do whatever you want, which is great. And
Within reason.
Within reason. It's pretty big reason, though. But I think the biggest thing to kind of weathering that is realizing that there are going to be all these ebbs and flows to everything. Like, I was mostly funded by one agency, and I got a couple grants from them, and they all kind of came in at the same time, and there was never going to be they were not going to give me any more money. So I could either go out and try to diversify, which I did somewhat, but I didn't have a lot of success, or I could kind of wait till they ran out and go back to them. And that is unnerving. But at the same time, some years you're going to have great productivity and have great success in a big group, and some years it's going to shrink down, and some years it's going to build back up. And you're going to have to take the long view on this and kind of see how it develops. You're going to have to kind of see where your career goes, because you have no idea. I'm working on stuff I never thought I'd work on before. And it's interesting and it's fun. And that's kind of what tenure gets you, is that you can branch out. You can do whatever sort of, within reason, crazy research you want to do.
So I know we're standing between lunch. I do want to ask this last question. We'll start with you, Jeff, on it. We're standing between lunch, so that is an important thing. And this question is about mentorship and how basically do you approach a mentor, right? So how do you reach out to a potential mentor that you want to build a relationship and a long-term kind of relationship? So Jeff, will you kick us off on that, and knowing we are standing between them and lunch?
Right. So I've prepared about a 20-minute presentation to answer this question. Well, this is an interesting question, because if you're approaching someone to be your mentor, I'm assuming you probably already know a lot about this individual. You presumably have respect for them and the decisions they've made in their career. And if they're the type of person that you want to have as a mentor, then most likely when you approach them, they're going to be very positive about agreeing to be your mentor. So, because I'm assuming you're all smart enough, you're not going to ask the person who you think would never be a great mentor. You're not going to ask that individual. Probably, I would recommend just if you already identified this individual, and different departments have different strategies, so my department sort of has an assignment of who your mentor is, so a faculty mentor coming in, but that can change as your interests and the faculty member's interests change. A simple email to that individual would be the starting point to set up a meeting to talk about the possibility. You just have to be, have enough confidence in yourself that you're worth the time for this other person to take some time. If they're mentoring other individuals, go talk to those other faculty who they maybe are already mentoring to validate that you think this is the right person who'd be a good match for you. It's a hard question.
Anyone else want to add? Yeah, go, please.
That's great, and everything I say echoes that, but I take a little bit of a different approach to mentoring because people don't really know what it means, right? So it's kind of awkward to go up to somebody and say, hey, will you be my mentor? They're like, well, what does that mean? Like, do I got to go to your kids' birthday parties? Like, what does that mean? A better approach is to figure out what you need at this point in your career and then go to the person who has it. Because if you just have one mentor, that person may not have what you want. If they've never written an NSF grant, then they're not going to be of use to you. But if you go to the person who just got one, they'll be really useful, right? And so I like to use the sandwich approach in my email. So I start with the compliment. I say something real nice like, oh my gosh, that grant you got is awesome. You were such a wonderful scholar. And then I ask for what I want. Do you have 20 minutes to talk to me about my idea and possibly connect me to your program officer? And then I close with another compliment. I think what you're doing is super exciting. I would love to hear more about it. And then you're probably going to get a response because, first of all, you've given them not one but two compliments. And people like to talk about themselves and all the great things that they're doing. And so, and if you give it a time-specific request, 20 minutes, because again, when you say mentor me, like, what does that mean? Like, we got to talk for 2 hours? But if I say 20 minutes, everybody has 20 minutes that they can carve out, right? And so that's an easy way to kind of get over the hump because it can be intimidating to talk to somebody who just got an NSF grant because you're such a great scholar and I want to be like you when I grow up in the profession. But it's intimidating. And people, because people have had like not so good experiences, it scares them to approach people. But the sandwich approach is a nice way, right? And if you go to them based on something that, an actual need, if you're writing a book and you've been assigned to a mentor and they've never written a book, well, that person's not going to be real useful to you. But the person who just got a book published at the hot press, that's the person you need to talk to. And so building a network of mentors based on what your specific needs are, where you are right now, is my recommendation. And then making sure that you continue to have that evolve over the course of your career would be my recommendation for establishing mentors. And sponsors, you need sponsors, and that's different from mentors. Mentors kind of tell you what to do. Sponsors are the people who shape the conversation about you when you're not there. And people who connect you to opportunities that won't come to you because you're an assistant professor, right? So if WRAL calls, they're not going to call you, they're going to call your dean. But if your dean knows what you're doing, then they will connect WRAL to you, right? And so it's the people who can talk about you in positive ways, but the only way they can do that is if they know you, and if they know you as a scholar. And your job is to teach people who you are as a scholar. They need to know who you are and what you do.
I love that answer, and I just want to tag on or echo that you can have multiple mentors, and not all of them have to be official mentors. So you can have a mentor with never having this conversation. I have done this to my department head multiple times where I'm like, I want advice on something, and I just say, hey, I've got this situation, I'd really like to bounce some ideas off of you. And then I go to her office and we have a conversation and I get what I need out of that. And I look at that as mentorship because she's been at this university longer than I have. She understands a lot of things just as, as a scientist, and she can give me that feedback. So you can have many unofficial mentors as well, depending on your needs.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. And thank you to the panel for your time today. Well, I know, Laura, you have one last thing to do, right? We'll sit here for just a second. Do it. This way.
Sorry. Okay. So I had one more Mentimeter question, but I know I'm standing between you and lunch, so we're going to skip ahead really quick. Before we break for the lunch networking session today, I did want to bring up an event that Research and Innovation is hosting in conjunction with the Research Leadership Academy, and we're also doing with NC State Libraries, and they have a networking table as well. So it's the 2020 University Research Symposium. This is for all faculty and any interested parties at the university. So the purpose of this event is to introduce researchers and scholars to each other to explore opportunities for new partnerships and to envision the future of research at NC State. So we heard a lot about everybody doesn't necessarily know what's happening in their own college, but we for sure haven't heard about research in other colleges at the university. So this is a great event for everyone to come to and learn more about what's happening here at NC State. This year's focus is going to be on climate change and resilience. So if you are doing research in that area, or you have a colleague you know doing something in climate change and resilience, we are actually looking for individuals to participate in lightning rounds, which will be 60-second to 2-minute talks, and then a digital poster session. They can let us know if they're interested when they sign up. This QR code on the side will take you right to the registration form. So if anybody wasn't here earlier with the QR codes, just open your photo app on your phone and zoom into that square, and it'll pull up the registration form. But we really encourage all of you to go to this event. It's going to be a great event this year. Last year's was a really exciting, collaborative time for faculty. So turned me off. Please do sign up for that. So I'm going to ask Milan Vogt to come back up to the stage and send us off for our lunch networking session.
Well, thank you so much again for coming today. I hope that the session was useful for you, and I'd like to thank the staff who A, organized this, and B, who are here to actually talk with you. The new faculty, relatively new faculty, welcome again. And I will not stand between you and lunch anymore. So thank you very much.